All right, welcome to another episode of Anyone Have a Pencil? This is round two with my guest, Stephen Ross of Renovating Kansas City. Stephen, what's going on, man? How are you?
Yo, what's up, brother? How are we? Let's do this again.
Yeah, the first session didn't go as great, so we're re-recording. We messed up some things on the production side, but luckily we have that all cleaned up now. So,
Yeah.
dude, I got to tell you something.
Yeah.
So one of my next door neighbors, who's a really good friend of mine, he's got three sons.
Okay.
And I have three daughters and they all run around together and hang out. But he came home the other day with some of those like gel soft guns. And we bought like the, cheap versions of them just to see like if the kids would be drawn to them and get use out of them. And it was a big hit.
Yeah.
So then we go to Walmart yesterday and buy like the 10X version of the guns.
Yeah. Let's go.
They have the Tommy gun version that's got like 1,200 rounds in it.
Oh my God.
And you just we had a war last night. It was me and him and one of the other dads in our neighborhood versus all the kids.
Oh man.
And it was at like 9:30 at night. And so, of course, Charlotte, my oldest, is like, Dad, I want to go with you. I was like, okay, like these like little pellets are going to hurt. I was like, if you want to come over and just like watch, and hang out. They have an older daughter that she goes to like cheer camp and stuff with. And I was like, you just want to watch or hang out with Presley? She's like, all right, let me get dressed. She puts on a like princess dress. Okay. Actually, she didn't wear any shoes, puts on a princess dress, shows up like, hey, I'm just going to watch, sees all the boys like running around the yard shooting at each other. And she just picked up a gun and like jumped into the fight.
Let's go.
Dude, she shot me in the face right below my eye.
Got you good, huh?
I was like, damn, shit. I mean, she's like dead shot, dude.
Yeah. Dude, that's incredible. Kids' toys nowadays, they can be pretty fun, and the nostalgic of it to like do like airsoft guns or, like Nerf guns or some stuff like that. You forget how much joy those kids' toys can bring you, and just to like be a kid again there's something to be said about it.
Oh my God. I had more fun. My expectations were low and I had an incredibly good time last night. Even just like running around with my daughter in the yard, like playing Rambo.
Yeah.
And, we live on, these are like half-acre lots. They have a big shop in the back of their house. So we set up barriers and like all sorts of things throughout the yard and had teams. It was awesome.
That's incredible. Yeah. No, like I said, kid stuff is fun. We went to here in Kansas City, there's an amusement park called Worlds of Fun.
Oh yeah.
Around forever. And I haven't probably been there in at least 15, maybe even 20 years. And my wife on a whim on Sunday, so a couple days ago, she's like, what do you think about taking all the girls? We've got three, right? What do you think about taking all the girls to World of Fun? After 3:00, you get like this discounted sunset rate, whatever. I was like, you know what? That sounds miserable to me, but like I'm in, let's make it happen. And the kids had so much fun. They're running around, just cheesing the whole time. Our 2-year-old wanted to ride every ride. She was frustrated she couldn't ride the Mamba, which is like an adult ride. She was frustrated she couldn't get on that. But man, there's something about it watching your kids just have joy in some of those things. It's pretty incredible.
Is that the place that has like the water park too? Or is that?
Yeah, it's got Oceans of Fun and Worlds of Fun. It's the same thing. And some parts of it are certainly pretty crusty, but man, they had a lot of fun.
Dude, I mean, I think that's one of my favorite parts about being a dad. I mean, other than just you get to, create little humans and they're like super cute and fun to be around, but it's really like reliving my childhood with them and like how they shape things differently is so much fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I thought of the usual, right? It's fun to have, and it's a blessing to have little ones. But to be able to just kind of be, I'm typically the fun one in our household, and then my wife kind of gets on us, and then when it comes time to it, I have to, be a disciplinary. But for the most part, I'm kind of just like, let's just let the kids do what they want to do. Let's just have fun. If they get hurt, they get hurt. It's okay. Like, let's try to keep them safe, obviously, but let's let them run around on the couch. Let's let them do their thing. If they get hurt, they bounce back quick. Right?
So I got another surprise for you since the last time we talked. So Tracy and I have decided to do a fertility treatment.
Okay.
Where we get to select the gender.
Okay.
I'm going hard in the paint to have a son.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. There we go.
Round it out. Dude, I mean, to be honest with you, man, I was struggling with it just because, in a certain sense, and I want your opinion on this too. I felt like I was, playing God a little bit. But I talked to my preacher about it at church and talked to some other buddies that, are Christ-fearing men. And they're just like, look, like, if I told you could have sex in one single position and guarantee that you would have a boy, would you not try that? And like, modern medicine is, a miracle. And, I think it's a beautiful thing that you could, not only bring another life into this world, but be able to kind of round that out. So we're going all in, baby.
Okay, let's go. Going for number 4.
Or number 1.
Yeah, that's definitely, can be considered a hot topic, and something that I'm sure a lot of people have different opinions on. And something that I'm a big believer in is, kind of just trust in your gut. You guys have obviously put some thought into it. And, my first thought, honestly, Addison, was like, okay, you guys have three girls, and that's great. But we also need some more sons and men in this world to be raised by good families, and by a dad who cares and a mom who cares. So for me, I was immediately just like, okay, if they're going to raise a son, like, that's great for the ecosystem of the world, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my take on it. But that's awesome, man. Good for you guys.
No, but I agree with you, man. I mean, I think I definitely benefited from, being raised by a good man, and imperfect, just like everybody is, but instilled some great values in me. And one of those values was just like the dedication to hard work, and that nothing's given to you in this world. Like, he never let me feel sorry for myself or, give me things that I didn't earn, which I think is something that's lost nowadays. Even when I got my first car, it was like, I had to go work and save money so I could put a down payment on my car. I paid for my cell phone bill in high school. I've had a job since I was 12. Mm-hmm. Either getting paid under the table or working construction in the summers or whatever.
Yeah.
And as much as I hated it then, man, am I glad that I had to do those things, like earning the value of $1, and earning and really placing value on what you do with that money once you earn it.
For sure. Yeah. And I think, something that I was reading about the other day, and I think about quite often, the quote was, nobody is coming for you, or something like that. Nobody is coming, with the overarching concept that, you've got to figure this stuff out on your own. And that doesn't mean that you're 1,000% on your own. We all have support systems, but just that concept about, nobody's coming. The buck's got to stop somewhere, and somebody's going to have to figure out how to get through whatever it is that yourself or your family is getting through. And I think a lot of that comes from how we were raised, how you grew up. I mean, again, certainly in an imperfect way, but to have parents that allowed you to fail and certainly propped you up when they needed to, and then allowed you to fail in the instances that they thought were necessary. And it kind of just brings a different, kind of just sheds a different light on an outlook, because I had that mentality of, I don't really need anything from anybody. If my parents offer stuff, or we get gifts, or we get stuff like that, like, that's great. but I'm under the impression like me and my family are going to have to go earn our keep, in the position that we want to be. I think it comes
Yeah.
from that.
Well, and how do you, I didn't grow up poor, but we, definitely struggled at times. And, I helped my mom pay her rent from a really young age, working odd jobs and stuff like that. My mom was horrible with money. And I think that's part of the reason, I kind of gravitated towards the financial markets and the financial industry, because I really wanted to understand that and to be able to make sure that I put my family in a position not to encounter those kind of issues. But, my dad was always there. My parents divorced when I was young. So my dad's paying child support and alimony. My mom's parents had done very well in real estate. So that's, another reason I gravitated towards real estate as well. And so they always made sure that we wanted for nothing. But, times got tough. My mom would go out and, buy a brand new Ford Expedition when we couldn't even afford the rent that was like in the house that we were living in. So, those experiences really taught me a lot. And I wonder about that sometimes with my kids, because they're just not in the same position that I was in. And I don't think that they ever will be financially, where it's a necessity for them to go out and earn. So I think your kids are probably going to be in a similar situation, right? Their dad's successful. You guys have a business that's growing and doing very well. So what kind of things can you do to really like try to instill those values in them? And is there anything that you're doing now that kind of sets that up?
Yeah, I think, it could be looked at a couple different ways. So it's about how to raise humble kids with confidence, right? You want them to be confident in themselves, confident with their decision-making abilities, their future, their skills. You want them to be as confident as possible, but at the same time, we want them to be humble, right? We want them to understand that not everybody is given the opportunities that they're going to be given, and there will certainly be people that are given more opportunities than I'll be able to give my kids. I hope that we can continue on the trajectory that we're on to continue to give our kids such a great life. But, who knows? Life happens. There's certainly going to be people that are significantly more successful than I am. And so for me, it's just about instilling a perfect amount, trying to instill the perfect amount of confidence that allows them to be their own person, make their own decisions, but at the same time be humble enough to say, I don't have all the answers. I need to go figure these answers out. I want to continue a quest for more information and more skills. It's going to be a hard thing to figure out, especially with three girls pretty close in age.
Yeah. Well, I think what you're really getting at there too, and I think it's important no matter what socioeconomic class that you come from, is developing a curious mind. For your kids, that not giving them all the answers. I think that's another thing that I've seen in this society that's like this instant gratification thing of like, and even the way that schools are right now with standardized tests, it's like you're just memorizing information instead of how do I use deductive reasoning? How do I use my ability to assess a situation and come up with a couple of plausible outcomes that, each one of those outcomes has its own consequences.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Where's that being taught?
Yeah.
Because it's not happening in schools, right?
No.
So the only way to get there is to create that curiosity of like, don't give them the answer, encourage them to go find the answer on themselves, make sure they don't go so far down, a rabbit hole that's harmful, but that they really need to be able to kind of problem solve for themselves by being curious, mm-hmm. and then setting them up with the tools to be like, all right, rational, if I'm comparing all three of these decisions and their outcomes rationally, which one's the best for me?
Yeah. No, I think that's a great way to think about it. Problem solving, being able to instill a problem solving gene into them, right, is huge. My wife does such a great job about this. So generally it's our oldest who's 5, and then our 2-year-old, they'll be arguing about something ridiculous, whose toys, whatever. And, the oldest one generally comes to Kelsey and is like, hey, Vivi won't give me this toy back or whatever. And Kelsey's response, I love it and love her for this, but one of her first responses is, have you tried talking to her about it first?
Yeah.
And the answer 99.9% of the time is no. And Kelsey's like, you go talk to her first. If you're still having issues, then come back to me second.
Yeah.
And she's learning. It's gonna be a long time before she'll understand. I need to take a crack at this myself first. And I think that's great. And I can learn a lot from Kelsey when it comes to parenting because she's really talented at that. But it's a funny thing that she does, and it's frustrating to the girls because they're just like, Mom, just fix it for me.
Right.
Like, we're not just gonna fix it for you. You need to try yourself first.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I see that all the time in our household too. And one thing I really want to discourage too is just like the tattletaling. Because I'm like, kids, like, Mom and Dad are not here to solve your problems for you.
Yeah.
And snitches get stitches.
Yeah.
So you need to, figure out. And the funny thing about it right now, that's kind of, I think Edda is going to evolve. Edda's my, second child, but Charlotte has she's so smart and so like calculated. So now she's figured out ways to get exactly what she wants from her younger sisters by just like offering them something in return. So she's negotiating. That's so great. Like even this morning, I'm waking up, but all the girls come into the bedroom and Charlotte's like, Edda has my, whatever Barbie doll that I want, and she's not sharing. And I said, well, you need to figure out how to either share or offer her something in exchange. And Charlotte leaves the room and comes back like 2 seconds later with like Elsa plastic necklace. And she's like, Edda, do you want to trade for this? She's like, this is jewelry. And Edda was like, yeah. She got it like right away.
Oh, man.
Teaching them those negotiating skills,
Yeah. They start from a young age. They start figuring how to work you as a parent and how to work their siblings for sure. It's crazy.
So, hey, I want to get into something professionally too, because this is something that just kind of popped up. And, Stephen and I's first episode, the audio is all on Buzzsprout. So it'll be distributed on Spotify, iTunes, and like anywhere else that you can find podcasts. So to learn a little bit more about Stephen's business and background, basically the short version of it is Stephen is a investor, owns a renovation company in Kansas City that's doing extremely well. And he's also got a lot of experience in like home inspections, buying and flipping properties for rent, putting tenants in place, all that good stuff. So great resource for real estate. So I wanted to bring this up to you, and I'm sure you've seen this in your business where you come into a situation. I think you mentioned this on the podcast last time, where somebody else has done a bad job in the house, and you're fixing somebody else's work. Okay. So I have a situation right now where I have a business partner who called me about this, and I'll tell you what I told him later on, but I want your opinion on it. So he bought some property from a developer, just a lot. And as part of that exchange, the builder said, hey, I want to be the person that builds your property. Okay. Well, fast forward 18 months, he's still 6 months out from having the property completed. The builder is not paying his subs on time. The subs are now complaining to the owner that they're going to start leaving the property. Okay. And it poses a situation I think most people find them in, where they just kind of like eat shit to go down the road with the same person instead of cutting bait, right? Because it's like, man, it's going to be so much more expensive for me to fire this guy, get his subs caught up, then bring in my own guy to finish out the work and possibly bring in his own subs. And I'm going to be paying them to guarantee somebody else's work. That's not like a great situation, right? But like, what do you suggest in that situation? How would you kind of break that down? What would be your steps to solving that problem?
I mean, first I look at all the how the contracts, right? Look at everything legal. I'm not an attorney, but I would certainly send this over to my attorney and say, what are my outs here? Who's at fault for what? Who's responsible for what? Trying to find a legal solution there first. Just something to press on a little bit to try to get it sounds like if the builder's struggling to deliver what he said he was going to, there's got to be some gentle levers that, y'all can pull to try to get him to speed up, right? For me, I would trust my gut on it. So based off, you could have a conversation with this gentleman and say, what's happening here, try to press for some questions. And if he's just feeding you BS, you'll know. And if it's my subs are behind, materials back ordered, the classic builder and contractor excuses, then you're just, you might as well just cut bait and get out. Because in building, as just because somebody finishes something doesn't mean that it's going to last, or doesn't mean that it's high quality. So you could certainly press him to get to the finish line, but let's be honest, is he going to deliver an A+ product? Probably not.
Right.
So for me, I would have, likely already been doing that. So I mean, like 18 months in, but there's always got to be a time where it's going to make more sense to cut bait, start over, bring in your own crew, and finish something out. But yeah, it's kind of a tough one. That's a long time.
A little more background to that story is that the builder also has some other projects going on. Okay. And, the building community is a small community. A lot of us share the same subs, right? So there's subs on these other contracts that are also complaining. And so what to me that signals is financial hardship. So he could be, moving money from project A to pay project B, and then just trying to kick the can down the road. That would be that's my first fear, right? So my first thing was, hey, do not pay the builder a single cent. You pay all of the contractors directly, and you get invoicing directly from them. Kind of remove him from the ability to manage any cash flow.
Yeah.
Right. That's number one. Said number two, you need to have a backup in place.
Yeah.
So, set him up with a couple of other builders that could finish a luxury product like that. I don't do anything luxury, so that would not be, I would never even offer my services on that. Just because you're talking about such a different level of, finish and completion and attention to detail and all of that. So set him up with them. I said, look, how much do you owe the current builder for his builder fee? He's like 60 grand. I said, okay, call these other builders. You have all the subs names because you're paying the invoices directly. See if they work with any of those subs. More than likely they do, or they have a good relationship with them, and offer them 30 grand to come in and complete the project for you and take over the subs. And that they'll guarantee the work. They'll do all the after completed repairs, builder warranty, all that good stuff. Right. You might have to negotiate on some of the builder warranty items that were in place when they took over the project, but you're saving 30 grand. So you can almost, self-insure that a little bit.
Right.
Then go to the current builder, tell him he's no longer needed. Okay. And if he gives you any pushback, you say, all right, well, look, we can have our attorneys discuss this. And then I'm going to want a full financial audit of where all the money I've been sending you has been going.
Right.
And then that should be enough to scare him off of his ledge, and he'll just get out of the way.
Yeah. I mean, if you start to call someone's bluff, contractor 101 is robbing Peter to pay Paul, right? Yeah. That's how a lot of guys get started, unfortunately. But if you do it on a large scale like that, that can be a very dangerous game to play. And yeah, I think that's great advice. I would get somebody on deck immediately who can come in that you trust and that you can work with, especially if they're working with the same subs. But yeah, I would remove him from the equation pretty quickly.
Yeah. So how do you, when you go into projects like that, or you hire subs, is there a way for you to be a little bit more hands-on monitoring that situation so that it doesn't blow up in your face, where the subs employees are coming to you like, hey, I'm not getting paid. Like, do you have any experience with that, or like any examples of times that that's happened?
I've not ever had a sub's employees come to us and say that their boss hasn't paid. Luckily, Kansas City is a pretty small market, especially in like the moderate to high end remodel space. There's only about a dozen firms like ours that kind of do what we do, and we all do a great job. We feed off of each other, but there is a bunch of subs that work with a lot of us. And if that sub wants to work in the design build category of general contracting in Kansas City, they try to do the best job they can to keep the GCs happy. So for the most part, we've not had any issues with that. We leverage technology pretty heavily in our space. So we kind of merged. We have several people that work at our company from a commercial background. So they're talking football stadiums, multi-million dollar projects. For us, we're doing 100,000 to $1 million, maybe $1.5 million as far as a top line project would be. And we're leveraging commercial practices. So we leverage technology to make sure that photos are being sent, videos are being sent, a Gantt schedule is being followed all the way through. And if I have a sliding Gantt schedule and inadequate photo proof that a job is being done, then our on-site construction managers are going to catch that pretty quickly. And then it triggers the delay in their build, which is what every sub wants, right? They want to get to that payday. That's all they really care about. Yeah. How much work can I get done to get paid on this job? And then I'll just kind of fudge my way through the end of it. Luckily, our subs work. They'll go to 99, 100%, and then they'll get paid.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Well, that's one way to do it, right? Is you don't have so many progress payments.
Yeah.
So you require them to get to 90, and then you have a final or whatever.
Yeah.
What kind of software is it?
It's called JobTread. They're based out of. I want to say it's based out of Dallas.
Yeah. No, I'm very familiar with that.
But I think they do a great job. We got hooked up with them about a year ago, and they're pretty progressive, forward-thinking company. So they're constantly rolling out new features.
Yeah.
And so we wear that out. We use it for time sheets, for clocking in, clocking out for the guys, for schedules, for community. We don't send emails to customers anymore. So everything is done through the JobTread Post platform. It comes over via email, but it's all tracked in this really nicely organized dashboard. We actually had some prospective customers in yesterday looking at putting on a large addition on their hopefully forever home. And they've hired contractors in the past, and they said that they were happy with the work, but the scheduling was always unknown. What time were they going to show up? When were they going to show up? Can I see what the schedule looks like? And when we rolled out to them what an example project looks like on our software, they were just like, this is fantastic. The guy even made a comment. He's like, if you can meet half of these deadlines, I'd be very happy. And we're like, well, we don't have to meet more than half. But we try to lay it out as best we can.
I think there's a lot of this market's like kind of insane to me. I mean, I should say like the last 5 years, what is it? 2024, right? So like 2020 to today. So last 4 years, I've never seen such a insane market cycle where we literally went from, COVID lockdown to everyone freaking out that the world's shut down to then, free money being printed and lent out, which was, obviously a huge, it tripled our business. I'm sure it had an amazing effect on your business, people being able to refinance, pay for renovations, all of that. Right. And then overnight, the Fed increases interest rates in the quickest scale that's ever been done. Right. So we go from, 2.5% to, 5.5%. Literally, I think I'd have to check my data, but let's say 12 to 18 months. Right. So then that slams on the brakes on the market. Right. Builders stop building. Inventory is at an all-time low. I think the most recent estimate I've seen was somewhere between 7 and 14 million homes across the United States that were short on inventory. I'd probably estimate closer to the 14 million just because of how many people are coming into the country, and those forecasts are typically a little bit conservative just to protect a little bit of the financial control. But I know for, in Texas, for instance, we're short about 370,000 homes. And I'm sure you're seeing that in Kansas City, stuff like that. So this market's kind of insane. How have you kind of adjusted from those big, turbulent spikes in the market? And then what do you see going forward? Like how does your company plan for the next 5 years?
Yeah. Yeah, great question. I mean, over the last year for us, so we live on the Kansas side in a county called Johnson County. Luckily, we're kind of in this insulated bubble, if you will, here in Kansas City. So we're fairly protected. COVID didn't, affect, I'm speaking financially, didn't affect Johnson County too much. A lot of people in Johnson County made a absorbent amount of money in COVID, some around real estate and technology and healthcare and things like that, right? So our customer base not only left the office space and started officing from their residence, but also increased their salary or bonus or sold businesses or whatever. So for us, it was the perfect storm of buckle up because we're about to get all the work we can get here. And we grew really fast, which was great, but obviously came with its own set of challenges. But from economical perspective, it was great. Now, kind of what I think I see moving forward, a buzzword right now is obviously it's election year, election time. Nobody knows what's going to happen. I try not to get in the fear mongering space that a lot of people do, like the world's going to come to an end every election cycle or whatever. Like you just got to keep doing your damn thing.
Yeah.
And not get just totally wrapped up in what's happening on Facebook or Twitter or whatever. And so for us, I think the future is bright as far as economic forecasting goes. And I'm no economist by any means, but by what's happening here in Johnson County, the rates pulled back a little bit. Johnson County prices have increased. And there are some really large corporations here in Kansas City that I don't know what the percentages are, but the percentage of the people who returned to office space versus working from home, it was not 100%. So there's a large portion of people that are still going to work in office out of their house, again, which is good for us. They're spending more time in their house. They want more amenities in their house. So yeah. I think the future is bright. I don't have much financial concern, especially in Kansas City, in the real estate, community.
I think we've talked about this before, but I don't think we got like super specific on it. I mean, your acceleration in your business growth was, in a 2 or 3 year period between what you and your brother were doing, renovating houses, to then you start a renovation company, then that market kind of takes off, right? How do you put yourself in a position to scale up that quickly? And then if you have to scale down, what kind of, fail proofs do you have in place? I know you're a people person. You got your organization's great. Your employees have huge buy-in. So where's that like kind of balance of like, hey, it's time to go. We got to hire. We're taking on more projects, blah, blah, blah. What's that number? And like, how do you plan if you have to go the other direction?
Yeah. Buckle up. This is my business class 101 in the most non-professional sense. So my kind of business philosophy, and I'm sure I'm just going to get trashed for this, but this was just what in my brain, what made the most sense. So when we started Renovating KC, all I cared about was revenue. All I cared about was getting the most amount of dollars through the door, bolstering overhead, bolstering salaries, expenses, payroll, to where I could just continue to, I never wanted to say no to work. And we had the qualifications to do it. It's not like we were doing projects that we should not have been doing. We had the qualifications to do these projects. It was just the amount of projects maybe was something foreign to us. So all I cared about for the first 24 months of Renovating KC was building a solid team, getting our name out there in the community, and generating as many dollars to come through our door as possible. I didn't really care.
You kind of have to do that, right? Because you're struggling with like proof of concept, and I need name recognition to really get to where I want to go.
Yeah, nobody knew who we were. Nobody knew the Renovating KC brand. Nobody knew that we were even in this space. Even still today, I have people on our social network that are like, yeah, you just still flip homes with your brother for investments, right? It's like, no, that's, we do significantly more than that. But, So for me, all I cared about was the dollars coming through the door. And we're in year 3. We're on month 32. And all I've really been focusing on this year and future is efficiencies and fine tuning the machine into spitting out a net profit that all I cared about. So the revenue is now great, but we reverse engineer back to the revenue number now. I want to know what the net profit is, and then we reverse the dial back to figure out, okay, here's our sales target each month on what we need to be collecting. So the revenue, we certainly don't want to go down, but we want that to stay where it's at and continue to grow. But it's more about the net profit now. So we have the ability, and we've learned on how to hire hourly versus salary, how to subcontract out for certain things versus hire that trade in-house, which allows us to be a little bit more flexible and nimble as sales, kind of ride that roller coaster. That way we're not stuck with this huge overhead that we can't afford.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's smart, right? So you want to increase your cash flow right off the bat, right? And then you want to put yourself in a position that you can turn jobs down.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's the best thing that I've learned. And I was in the same position, right? I mean, I was a deal junkie where I'm like, I got to do all these deals, figure out, even if my margin was not what I needed it to be, I'm just like, I need to get market share.
Yeah.
Okay. Which I don't regret at all. I'm glad that we got the market share. And one of the externalities of that is that having market share means that your phone rings first when there's a deal. So people are calling you first, like, hey, I know he's a buyer. I know he can turn this project into money. So we're going to call, Addison first or Steven first, right?
Yeah.
So the downside of that is we're a small company. And part of our success has been maximizing potential out of each position that everyone wears a couple different hats in the organization. But there's like a point of no return where you're doing them a disservice, right? You're overworking them.
Yeah.
So now we're in a position where we have like the pick of the litter on deals, which ones we want to take on. So we're doing fewer deals, but with better margin, right? And in turn, that allows us to provide a higher quality product, still at a really good discount to our investors, and we get to control our deal flow more acutely because it's not pandemonium.
Yeah, for sure. At that point, I mean, you're not desperate for deals or for revenue or generating money or whatever. You're a little bit more stable. So yeah, we are certainly, our conversion rate has gone down for a few reasons. A, because we're priced adequately for the business to be successful, not for the customer to just be successful, right? Because we used to just price it at break even just to get the money to come in so we could complete the job, so we can hopefully have a happy customer and move on to the next one. Now we're presenting pricing where it's advantageous for the customer's going to get a white glove service, and we're going to make some money at the end of this as well. And, we befriend our customers. They want us to make money. We've shared with a few customers before, like, hey, we just broke even on this thing. And they feel bummed about that because they know that the work that we put in deserve to have some profit at the end of it. But yeah, now we lose some jobs because our prices are priced and we're not really willing to negotiate on that, and then we're becoming much more selective on, hey, this customer, maybe they're showing red flags either financially or wanting, just dropping by the office randomly without an appointment, or we can just tell that they're going to be a large time suck. And we're a small company too. We don't have the manpower to have 40 different customers coming by the office every other day to talk.
Well, there's got to be a level of trust there too. Like, look, we're charging this price. I mean, first of all, you want to be kind of in that premium pricing when it comes to somebody's primary residence. I mean, speaking from personal experience, like, I'm not tripping over pennies in front of a steamroller on my personal residence, dude. I'm paying for the highest quality that I can and a smooth transaction, because the last thing that you want to do is have somebody in your house longer than what you expect. That causes turbulence for your family, for your kids, like not having routine. Somebody's working on your house, for 6 months instead of when it should have been 3 months. That becomes not worth the change in price. Right?
For sure. Yeah, and for the trust thing is huge for us. Like right out of the gate, when we go from pre-construction to construction, it's the first chance that the customer is seeing our guys on site or our subs on site. And you've got to set a brand new first impression all over again. I'll give you a real life example that just happened. We started demo on a project, single family house. It's about a 3,500 square foot house. We're demoing basically the whole interior and starting over. Our demo crew, who we subbed out, loaded the dumpster, and the guy who came and got the dumpster after hours at like 7:00 at night didn't put a tarp on the dumpster, drove off through the neighborhood.
Oh,
Trash everywhere. And the customer got an email they don't even live in the house yet. They just bought the house. Customer got an email from the HOA president and was like, hey man, welcome to the neighborhood, but
yeah.
trash everywhere. Your contractor's blowing trash everywhere. So naturally and fairly, the customer called us, was fairly frustrated. It's like, yeah, I'd be pretty pissed and embarrassed too. You don't even, this is your first welcome to the neighborhood. And I told the team, I was like, guys, our trust value just went all the way down. That's not necessarily like, that's on our sub, it's on our sub be hauling the dumpster, but that's our problem to deal with. So it's time to get back into building his trust back up to where we want it to be, because he did lose trust in us. He was hammering us with questions. He wanted to know every detail of what was happening through demo. And it took us a few days to get his trust earned back. And we did. And we're now moving into the project. But you got to be able to recognize that you lost trust with your customer, and it's your job and your job only to build that.
Yeah, I mean, especially in our business. I mean, a lot of people look at real estate like, oh, it's like a transaction where, there's an exchange of money for doing a job, but it's not. This is not you're not trading stocks by yourself in your basement.
Right.
This is a customer service job first, and it just happens to be related to real estate.
Yeah.
But like, that's how our company is set up too. I mean, we go over and above with all of our investors, make sure we walk them through everything. We don't charge them a single dollar, where a lot of these companies are charging for like coaching programs, or you want access to our inventory, you have to pay this fee and blah, blah. We don't do any of that. We we spend probably 15 to 20 hours with each new investor before they're even allowed to buy property from us. Mm-hmm. Because I want to make sure that they understand exactly what we're delivering and what their expectations are in this transaction of like what they're buying, what can go wrong. We're not selling a dream. We're selling something that requires responsibility after you close. You can't just like buy the stock and sit back and wait for the right time to sell. There's ongoing maintenance, there's communication with your property manager. And part of that is that, we stay with our clients for years and years after they buy, even though, we have no financial attachment to the property. We're not making any money off of the property after they purchase it from us, but we're a resource for them. And we want to make sure that we can help guide them and provide education or resources for them based off of what happens in the market and what's next.
Yeah, well, I say it all the time. We're in the customer service game. We might be building something, we might be installing a new bathroom or redesigning a new kitchen, but it's all about customer service. And the faster that you can realize that and recognize that as a new business owner, just the better off you're going to be, for sure.
Yeah, so I want to touch on something that we got into a minute ago, just about like, it is an election year and there's a lot of hyperbole and hysteria online, and the Democrats and the Republicans have come out with their the media's in full force of like scaring you one direction or the other. My personal opinion on that is, I only get one vote. So, I'm going to vote the way that I vote, but my responsibility to, my own personal finances, to my family, to our investors, is to explore what happens policy-wise if one president gets elected over another. Right? Do you guys take a look at any of that? Is there like a pivot point where it's like one person gets elected, you need to adjust here, or not really?
Not really. We're a little bit, you're kind of more on the macro scale with being in the investor DNA space kind of thing. We're a little bit more just scale for us. What impacts the Johnson County bubble the most is just jobs, right? And so if there's major corporations here in Kansas City, which luckily we don't have like an anchor, Cerner certainly employs a lot of people here, big health, they're in the healthcare space. But for us, no, I mean, because I'm not on such a large scale with having to deal with, markets or anything like that. It's basically just if the homeowner purchased the home correctly, refied when they were supposed to, and have set their house up, their asset up to be successful, then they can absorb a improvement on their space very easily. But fortunately, no. That's why I try to keep my headspace clear of all that, because it can certainly become very radical.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably paying a little bit more attention to like local municipalities rather than national ones. But let's just say in the next 12 months, interest rates come down by 1%, 1.5%, right? So that's another refinance boom, because everybody that's purchased property over the last 2 years is going to be at a much higher interest rate, right? So here we go, refinance boom number 2. Does that change things for you? Are you prepared to scale for that? Or does it not really change anything where it's like now, okay, there's more deal flow, right? And then it just allows you to maybe increase your pricing a little bit more, be a higher premium product, and still take on the same amount of deals, or can you take on additional?
Yeah, so there's really, I've got 2 strategies around that. One is the homeowner strategy. So what Renovating Casey's core competencies are is homeowner improvements, right? So a lot of people will refi, a lot of people will take out home equity lines of credits, and certainly that will be very advantageous for us to be in a very lucrative spot. We've got plans to scale. Our business plan and model and infrastructure is fairly well baked at this point. So it's just a matter of adding additional teams, but we're not having to create new positions like we have for the last 32 months. So we feel like we have the recipe ready to deploy if we need to from a scaling perspective. But we're kind of also silently waiting in the wings to see from an investor perspective, because when we were flipping houses, 6-7 years ago, we didn't have crews. Like, we didn't have an office space. We didn't, quite frankly, looking back on it, we didn't know what the hell we were doing. And I would love to have deal flow pick up and start working on 1-2 flips a month. Our team is just like chomping at the bit to get back into that, because some of the guys that have been here for that long or around us for that long know that that's our DNA, is the flipping side of things. So it can be lucrative for both ends for us. And we're ready to scale for sure. Yeah.
Is there any aspiration to expand your service area outside of Missouri and Kansas?
I get asked that more frequently now. There's a roofing company that I admire here that's done a great job in their ability to scale. I think they've been in business now for about 6 or 7 years, but last I understood, they were about the $20 million mark. And again, they're roofing, so they're a hybrid of servicing owner-occupied, also a large portion of their business coming from the insurance, deal revenue funnel. So they scaled out to like Omaha and St. Louis and into Oklahoma and through different cities throughout Missouri, like Springfield and areas like that. So it's been interesting to watch them expand. And I never really thought about it until about the last 6 months. And I started to kind of do a little bit of research in these other small markets that are close to us to figure out who is like us in those markets. And there's not a lot of people. So it's not anything we have plans to do anytime soon, but it's kind of on our multi-year forecast.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a natural progression, because you have systems that are so well, like the operations side is something that you could sell almost like a franchise, right? So it's like you're already adding another team, right? In the event that you need to scale up. So you know what to look for in putting a team together in another market. And then the, hit the light switch part is like having all the back end, the operations, the checks, the due diligence, and the quality control. So you have that. It's just like insert player 2.
Yeah, that's essentially what it is. And I mean, we feel like we understand, we got started with referral base. That's how we got all of our leads, was 100% referral. We didn't spend any money on marketing leads or anything. we've slowly started to put out marketing material and spend a little bit of money to try to make us look a little bit more professional online. But we feel like we could get into one of these other small markets and compete from day one from a marketing perspective based off what we've learned here in Kansas City just over the last few months, really.
So one thing on, the political side that I'm following very closely is there's a difference in the Trump administration versus the Harris administration on bringing back some tax incentives for real estate. One of the big ones that affects us is called cost segregation. Mm-hmm. So, typically on, a residential home, you can depreciate that property over 27 and a half years. On a commercial home, I think it's like, or a commercial property, I think it's like 35 years or maybe 37 and a half, something like that. I have to go back and check my accounting degree that I never got. But the reason that's important is because, if I buy a property or build a property today, let's say it's a $400,000 property, right? The total depreciation on that is $80,000. So as a real estate professional, I can accelerate that $80,000 in one single year to offset my income. So if I made $100,000, I accelerate to 80, I'm only paying taxes on 20 grand, right? That's a huge benefit. That's also, looking at like spurring growth. If you're looking at declining GDP, like that's a tax incentive that helps increase GDP. It also makes real estate more expensive, which is, I understand both administrations want to try to make it more affordable. So like, where's the balance there? Right. Well, the Biden administration had a step down in your accelerated benefit. So it went from 100% to 80% to this year it's 60%. Next year it's supposed to adjust to 40, right? So that greatly, that takes a lot of, tax incentivized buyers out of the market because they can find tax incentives or accelerated benefits in other, financial avenues. So I'm paying a lot of attention to that, what the administration might do, blah, 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 but also what's going to happen with interest rates. And I don't think that either administration is going to matter when it comes to that. I think when you're looking at, so what we're seeing right now is like, declining GDP and declining GDP expectations, slower job growth. Even if you look at, the non-farm payroll numbers from, last week, they were short about 60,000 jobs under expectation. So you're seeing this like tightening where you're going to run out of runway. I'll put it that way. Right. And so you have to start spurring growth again. And one way to do that is to lower interest rates. So I think that's like a foregone conclusion. JP Morgan is estimating that you're going to see 0.5% interest rate reduction this year and probably 0.25%, or actually 0.5% in September, 0.5% in December, a quarter interest rate reduction every quarter throughout 2025 to try to expand the economy and grow. Right. Yeah. The interest rate's almost as big of a deal, if not as big of a deal, as the tax benefit and the cost segregation. And both ways, one is that it spurs purchasing, primarily on the primary homeowner side, but also refinancing and also investor purchasing. I don't know that if either one of those things happen, that property is going to get any more inexpensive. I just don't see it. I don't see how either administration can say we're going to make owning a home more affordable based off of the way that the monopoly board is set up right now. So in a world where less people can afford a primary residence, right? How do you see that evolving your business? If at all? I mean, it seems like you're positioned already at like the high end, so it doesn't really matter to you.
Yeah, I think you're correct there at the end. I think where a big piece that sets us apart from others is certainly we're a general contractor and design build firm, but with my background from the investment and the asset protection space, like getting people to understand the proper ROIs for certain things that they're doing on their property or on their home is going to be more important than ever. Because if you're not paying attention and you overpay on a fixer upper, and my family's going to fix this thing up and we got a great deal on it, next thing you know, they're going to spend $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 remodeling, and they're going to be the highest comp in the neighborhood by $250,000.
Yeah.
That does them nothing but disservice. And you hope that, it'll be my long-term home is what they would say. But life happens. Yeah. And the last thing that you'd want is for them to get caught in an upside down situation where they have to move. And then they owe at the closing table a large chunk of money because they weren't paying attention to the asset.
Yeah.
And I think that will become more and more important. And everyone's got to elevate their space in the real estate community right now. Like this is going around with realtors with this new buyer's agency commission breakdown, this big lawsuit, et cetera, whatever. Everyone's got to figure out a way to just certainly bring value in alternative ways, but they also just got to do their damn job the best they can.
Yeah.
And that's something that we're going to bring is like, not only are you going to get design and construction and all of the very obvious things that we have to offer, but you're going to have somebody look at your house who knows what they're doing from a value perspective, and hopefully educate you enough to make wise decisions on your improvements.
Yeah, absolutely. Protect you from the downside risk. Yeah,
for sure. And I think that's how people can stay ahead of the game here, because a lot of people, like their biggest investment is their home. And if you screw that up, you can screw up your whole family's economics for a long time. And it's tough.
Well, I also think it presents a huge, I will shout this from the rooftops as long as I can, but it also provides like a big opportunity for your fix and flip side, where the flip doesn't become as much part of the deal as the ongoing cash flow of the property. Mm-hmm. Because the more expensive real estate gets, the more renters enter the market. I read an article last week that there's now 3 times as many renters in the market than there are homeowners, like people that can afford a home, which is at a historical high. And so it's really getting rid of like the middle class opportunity to own real estate. And not to sound, doomsday or anything like that, but when you look at like BlackRock Financial, all of these other funds, companies like mine, that you're going to have, instead of a middle class, you're just going to have a class of landlords and tenants, like people that own the real estate, that control the market for that, and people that rent from them for the rest of their lives. And, talking to one of my property management companies too, he's like, we interview all of our tenants. And like over the years, I've never seen, and we ask them like, are you interested in purchasing? Is this a rent to own situation? Blah, 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 right? He's like, I've never had so much data come back where like people under 30 have no intention or desire to ever own a property. Isn't that like, I don't know if that's insane, but it's, I think a monumental shift in what you would consider like the American dream, which was, work hard, put money in your 401k, own a home, pay that home off, retire. What do you think the new shift is in this like younger generation? Like what's they're not going to own a home, right? They want the ability to be a little bit more flexible, maybe work from home.
Yeah.
What is the new American dream? What do you own?
I think the Instagram answer to that is business ownership, which is not always the easy answer. I mean, we chatted about this last time that you're going to eat shit a lot when you're owning your own business. And I think Instagram doesn't do a great job of showcasing that right now. So I think part of the new American dream is I'm going to start my own business and I'm going to do my own thing and I'm going to set my own hours and I'm going to work for myself and all that stuff that can become true, but it's kind of giving a false reality. So I think we're veering people away and the younger generations away from a very stable asset in real estate and then getting them into whatever social media tells them to get into. Like I said, whether that's owning a business or being an influencer or whatever. You got to take a look back in time and history at what are the most concrete valuable and stable assets. And regardless of your age, like you've got to at least explore those, and how can you secure something like that to set yourself up. And that's all I could do, will do, to try to instill in my kids is like, my parents told me buy a house as quickly as you can because it's one of the most stable long-term assets. So I listen.
Yeah.
And I'll tell my kids the same thing. And if you want to go start a business or you want to go do something crazy, that's great. But like, let's get some concrete, like let's build a foundation first.
Yeah. I think my mindset's a little bit different than that, where, I don't look at a primary home as an investment. In fact, I think it's a bad investment. If you look at like the amount of, like, look at any amortization schedule on a mortgage of how much interest you pay over your 30-year mortgage, you're actually like losing money on that transaction. But the alternative is that, you're paying rent and that money is just a sunk cost.
Right.
So I would rather own that piece. There's also a lot of value in having a home, and this, being a husband and having a wife and kids is like, it's important to nest and create memories in a certain place. So to me, like, that's well worth whatever the financial exchange is for that. But what I think is it's more of educating this younger class too on like how valuable a store of wealth real estate is. And that it's created more millionaire and billionaires than any other asset class throughout history. And that if you do it the right way, which is, aligning yourself with someone like Steven's company that can help you with, hey, if you add this value to this property, you're going to protect yourself from the downside, be smart about it. And then here's some of the potential upside that you can get. And if you decide to rent the property out and cash flow it, it's a great store of wealth. You're arbitraging your debt. You're paying off your mortgage using somebody else's money. I think that's just a beautiful thing that I hope doesn't get lost in the shuffle with this younger generation. But going back to the entrepreneurship, so I would have tended to agree with you, like where all these people are like starting business and that's like the new American dream. But I also think that's so incredibly smart with this like new work from home era. So what's not included in the jobs numbers, and what a lot of people don't understand, is that during COVID, a lot of people chose to work from home or start like 1099 contract businesses where they actually contract with their previous employer as a 1099 employee. That number doesn't get counted in the employment figures. Did you know that? Mm-hmm. And if they 1099 with 4 companies, that's also not getting counted. So they're essentially working 4 jobs doing the exact same thing. Because like with modern technology and how the workplace is set up, you don't need 8 hours in a day. When they tell you to like come in, not work your 9 to 5, if you're an employee, most of the time, if you're a specialist, you can get that job done in like 2 to 3 hours a day. So instead of working 9 to 5 at one job, sitting around being inefficient with their time, they're actually working 10 to 12 hours a day, and they're taking on 3 or 4 contracting positions. I think that's so freaking smart. Yeah. And you set yourself up as a business owner so you get all the tax benefits that go along with that, all the write-offs, the pass-through. And one of the most like beautiful additions to that is to add real estate to your portfolio, home office, Airbnb, short-term and long-term rentals that you can, use. And like, if you want to pop town to town, own an Airbnb in Kansas City, one in Vegas, one in Dallas, whatever, rent it out, and then go use it when you're traveling for work, whenever you want, get out of there. I think, like, to me, going back to that original American dream, it sounds great, but it's also very confining, right? It's like work for the same company, put your money in the 401k, you're going to get Social Security, your house is paid off, right? But so many things in the market have shifted from 50 years ago that a lot of that American dream just isn't possible anymore. Yeah. And the new American dream, in my mind, if I was going to have to define it, is just like ultimate freedom and lack of like a lack of regimen, and like you have to do things this way, 9 to 5, Monday through Sunday, or Monday through Friday, right? The new American dream is I get to work from wherever I want, whenever I want, and I get to apply my skill set to as many different companies as I want, should I choose to be a 1099 employee. I think that's like if I was going to say like, what would a better American dream be? That's it.
No, I agree. I think the opportunity is there for people that have the creative mindset to go find it. And yeah, earlier I wasn't, knocking to be a business owner. I think there's false expectations set on how easy it is.
Totally.
But to set up like what you just described would take some challenge to get through to get that set up and to sharpen your skills enough to where you could go work 2 or 3 business days in a day and set your own schedule. And yeah, that to me, that would be exactly how to start an American dream. And then you can start a family from wherever with private school and homeschooling and technology there. Like you can take your family wherever you want. Yep. And create a living wherever you want. And you can hook up, buy an RV and travel the country, right, and run your family that way. I agree. I don't think there needs to just be, in my opinion, some sort of concrete foundation that you have to build. You can't just simply wing it and do all these crazy ideas at a certain point in your life. And for me, that hinge point was getting married and having a family. Like prior to that, I was just job hopping and just doing whatever I could to make a buck because I thought that it's just what I was doing. And now it's like, okay, we've got to build a little bit of a foundation before we really get into doing more aggressive opportunities. So it's all relative to your season of life.
Yeah. And I think that's obviously helpful, right? You become a little bit more risk adverse as you have more things to lose, right? You have a family to take care of, a financial future, right? But man, I'll tell you what, sometimes I wish that I just had that like bet it all on black mentality.
Yeah.
Just like the thing that got us in the business that we started was that mentality. I was just like, what it takes to be an entrepreneur is basically the confidence, and I don't want to call it ego, but yeah, it's a little bit of ego of like, I can do a thing better than other people can do a thing. That's the only reason to start a business. If you don't think that you can do that, then there's no point in having a business because you're not going to be competitive, right? And you have no vision of how to improve the widget that you're trying to sell.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of risk to do that. Unless you have family money or some, private financier that's just like writing you a blank check to go for it, you're going to be broke. You're going to eat shit. And one of my favorite quotes that you had on our last podcast is like, if I was going to break it down and put it in like on a t-shirt, it would be like, you have an LLC, not a business. Like, yes. It costs $300 to set up an LLC.
Yeah.
The blood, sweat, tears, the war scars that it takes to actually build the business is what everybody needs to experience.
Yeah.
And that does take a little bit of that, like, hey, put it all on black, put it all on red, whatever. Let's roll the wheel. We're going to go because I believe that I can build this thing. And I'm like a victim of my own comfort now, right? I've built this thing. I have a family. I've got a mortgage. I've got, all of these assets that, they're assets, but they're also liability on the book, right? That's the power of leverage, but you play that game. So if I was to start all over, would I still have, would you still have the, let's roll mentality? What happens tomorrow if Reno KC and your other businesses are at zero? What do you do? What's step one?
I like to think that one of my strong suits is selling. So for me, it's like, I enjoy having a little bit of pressure on me to go out and perform in a sales perspective. So like, I would be able to just hopefully generate a new idea and then go out and figure out a way to sell it. Because for me, if it's my own idea and it's my own recreation of the wheel, obviously, whether it's right, wrong, or different, I think it's great because we created it. And therefore, I'll have the passion to go sell it. And that's what's, you talked about rolling the dice with business ownership now, whether you just want to bet it all on red or black. Like there's certainly days, and I know that you've had them as well, where it's like, we better go out and sell something before we're in a world of hurt here. Yeah. And that's probably my sports background. It's probably my competitive background. But when I'm sitting here talking to the other 2 owners of Renovating KC and I've got to report on sales numbers and I say, guys, we're looking a little light for next month. And they don't, neither one of them have to say anything. It's just that look like, dude, you better go figure it out. And we do. And I kind of like that. I kind of like that your back's up against the wall, kind of like, go figure this out really quick. So the other 20 people that work here have a job in the next 7 months.
Yeah. I mean, sales solves everything. Then you have to figure out all the back end, the operations, the execution, all of those things. But like, I was ask myself this question all the time. What if I had to start all over? And it's exactly right. I would take my sales experience and my knowledge of real estate. I would just do the whole thing over again. Right. One way to mitigate so much of that risk where it's not a roll of the dice, where it's not a spin of the roulette wheel, which I had to learn early on because, early on, I was like, oh, I need to buy the property. I need to build the thing. Then I need to sell the thing. Well, now I don't even sign a contract unless I know the property is sold. Like that removes most of my risk. I know there's a market for that thing because I have it under contract. If my buyer backs out, I've got refundable earnest money, which will carry all of my interest expenses on that project, right? If I have to liquidate the earnest money. But now I look at a piece of property, like I went down to Houston last week. I tied this property up. It's 19 single family home lots, and it's 20 completed properties that the builder was unable to sell because interest rates adjusted, right? They don't have the buyer. But I looked at it and I was like, oh, I can rent these out, buy them at a fraction of his cost just to provide him liquidation. On my way back to the airport, I call 3 of my investors, pitch them the deal. It's already under contract. I signed the contract the same time they did. my risk is none.
Yeah.
So that's the thing I wish that people would know in business too, is like, you don't have to build the widget first. Go test your market. Go make the sale first. I have another buddy in Dubai that I think I've told you about him, but he created like that red light therapy machine that you can like put it on your face. It helps with like acne and herpes outbreaks or just bad skin, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So he will create a product. Okay. He's got all of the engineering done, all of the renderings. He shoots video on how it works and what the effects are. He does prototypes and tests it, right? But before he orders any large quantity of the product, he's running Facebook, Google, Amazon ads, all of that stuff. And he pre-sells his first like 3 orders.
Yeah.
That's genius.
Yeah. Yeah. The Kickstarter model, right? Where you kind of pre-sell just to fund, ideally you can fund it yourself. That way you don't have to give away any, not taking on poor debt or giving away equity early. Ideally you can fund it yourself. But yeah, the pre-sale concept is genius, I think.
Yeah. And I just think that if you are going into business, if you can find that concept first, and it's kind of like that old saying, like just act as if. Like I think that saying's bullshit, right? But there is a certain level of act as if. Like act as if you know that you have the best product because you've troubleshooted all of that before you started the business, right? Then go out and sell the whole thing and act as if you can deliver all of those products on time and to the quality that you promised to your client. And it's only act as if you can't do it. So just make sure that what you've communicated to your clients and all of the work you did before you went and sold the thing, you know that you can deliver. Now, things are going to come up. Problems are going to have to be solved. Inefficiencies are going to have to be accounted for, but think those things through. Like when we talked about that earlier with like our kids, like understand that plan A is never the plan that sees itself all the way to the finish line, dude.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's like, D, E, and F. Just because there's so many things you can't account for. But understand, like if X, then Y.
Yeah, I love it, man. I mean, for us, that's why we like our space a lot, is because, we sell 2 contracts. So we sell pre-construction contract and then a construction contract. So when I go to sell, or when the team goes to sell that construction contract, the entire product has already been, baked on the computer. All the budgets, all the trade partners have looked at everything. The customers approve all the selections, etc. So in theory, when we sell that and the customer signs off and executes that contract, barring we don't screw anything up or nothing really changes outside of change orders, we know the product that we're selling and what the profit should be, the timeline, etc. And that's why I like the design build space so much, is because before I'm going to get somebody to agree to a $500,000 remodel, like I need them to know what they're buying, and then from a company perspective, I need to know what this means for us. What is our margins? What's our net? What's our capacity here from a timeline perspective? If those things don't align, then we can't take the project.
Right. And you've gotten in the way, for the most part. You're in the way of things going wrong because of the planning, the execution, the pricing, the models that you've built out. Now, every once in a while, some asshole is going to drive down the street with a dumpster that doesn't have the top on it. And you got to solve for that. But you can't model that into your prediction.
Yeah, we certainly have contingencies, but we need to start going back and filling out the description of what happened with some of those contingencies. And on that one, I'll specifically put asshole driving dumpster truck, untarped, right in the description.
Yeah, we have a line item for assholes that.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
yeah, that's funny.
I love that, man. Well, hey, I really appreciate you coming on. I know I'm taking up a lot of your time, but we got to have you on more often, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure, brother. Absolutely. I'm in whenever. You just let me know. Well, are you guys planning a trip back to KC anytime soon, or what's the thought there?
I don't know. I think we'll probably be back there sometime during the holiday season.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll let you know, get a little trip together, come out there. Maybe we can shoot another podcast in your studio.
Let's make it happen.
All right, brother. Appreciate you.
All right. Take care.
Later.